What's up? This video is going to be on SPIR Global, ticker symbol SPIR. Just want to do a quick update, right? I've been gone for a while, been not busy, I've just been lazy. So a lot of stuff's happened, right? So today we saw SPIR Global have a little pop in the morning and then it fell back down. It's kind of same thing with the market, right? The market all just went up and then went back down and then kind of went back up. And so what led to SPIR Global's pop? It was this, apparently they had some Canadian contract worth $1.4 million Canadian to basically help with Canadian shipping, right? And like, yeah, this is good news, but I mean, like 1.4 million Canadian, that's like $50, right? I think like $50, something like that. Just kidding. But like, really, so this really does show that companies, governments, all like, there's just the TAM, the total addressable market for SPIR Global is just getting bigger and bigger. More and more people are noticing how important it is to basically have all this data for shipping, right? For on-time shipping, for like global security, for weather, right? These are all really important. And this is really showcasing that. But the really weird thing is I don't really understand why this specific contract got more press as opposed to something that happened recently. Last week there was actually a contract that SPIR Global had with the Department of Defense for $14 million, spread over 4 years, right? So the project ends in 2028, but it's $14 million, right? So even if you over 4 years, if you change that to annually, that's about what, 3 million-ish, 3 point some mil, like 3.5 million-ish, right? That's still more than the $50. Okay, about the $1 million, like 1.2-ish million dollars contracts that we have with the Canadian government, right? And it's kind of interesting why that's. I should probably put this closer. And it's kind of interesting why this didn't actually get that much press, whereas this Canadian one did. That's just something that I don't know, beats me. But the thing, I really like this contract, this $14 million contract, just because it showcases multiple things that I feel are really bullish for SPIR Global, right? Number one, this contract with the Department of Defense was awarded, right? It was won. Basically, SPIR Global had to compete with other companies in order to obtain this contract, right? Which basically means that, like, out of all these companies that competed with SPIR Global, I don't know how many, but the Department of Defense chose SPIR Global, meaning that they're either more reliable, they're more consistent, they have a bigger moat, right? They're basically just the leader of the pack, right? Like they have more to give. But the other thing is also, you see like the monetary value, and it's also much bigger than before, right? Like it showcases the growing contract sizes that SPIR Global is dealing with, right? Before it was 2 million, 3 million, 6 million, right? And then now it's 8 million, 10 million, 14 million, right? Obviously they just got the 1.4 million Canadian, but it does show that like there is like a slight like steady upward like trend in the contract sizes, right? Basically what that means is this, for the same amount of work that they did in, let's say, 2020, they get almost like 3x, 4x, 5x the amount of return, not doing the same exact work in 2024, or I guess in 2028, right? Which is really bullish, basically saying like they have more pricing power, right? They can charge more money for the same amount of work. And this also like showcases, as again what SPIR Global was talking about, how they're focusing on how their data is so important in so many different fields, right? The Canadian contract was with shipping. This Department of Defense contract for 14 million, that's obviously global security, right? The thous was for airline, like air travel and stuff like that, and kind of like air traffic control, right? Then they have weather and environmental patterns and things like that, right? So like all these things, like SPIR Global has like their fingers in all of these different jars, and I just find that like their TAM, their total addressable market, is like growing consistently, right? There's more and more demand for SPIR Global, and them being the leader of the pack, them being the leader of this kind of like basically a first mover's advantage, right? They have kind of like dibs on all these things, right? Because they have that pricing power, right? Now I just learned of a term called CanSlim, which is basically a really famous investor, a very famous trader. He coined it, basically saying like, this is how you use CanSlim to find basically the bottom, or to find companies that are going to grow really rapidly, right? And then I feel like SPIR Global fits this acronym, or fits this like search tool, or this this screening tool perfectly, like absolutely perfectly. So we have current earnings, right, C, and annual earnings, A, are growing year over year or quarter over quarter, right? And that's happening, right? I mean, obviously, like, they're still cash flow negative, but management keeps saying and keeps projecting that they will be cash flow positive by summer. And you see that, like, in their balance sheet, they're getting like more and more money, right? They're restructuring their debt, right? They had that cash injection from quarter one, so that's also a good thing, right? That also lowers the amount of money they have to spend on their debt. They're getting bigger and bigger contracts, right? So they have the pricing power to increase their contract sizes, and also getting more and more businesses. That's also good, right? That will also contribute to the top line. And then the N in them, new products, right? Basically new different like new technologies, new products, right? They're working with their AI, right? Them utilizing their AI and giving that to customers that might need on-time shipping, all that stuff, right? That's really important, and that's something that that's a new thing that SPIR Global is offering in their growth thing, right? And honestly, that company in general is just a new company, right? This radio wave, like this listening satellite, is a new product that they want companies to leverage in order to basically save on costs, in order to be more secure, all these things, right? And that brings us to the next letter, S, which is basically supply and demand, right? And like supply and demand is like the best thing going for SPIR Global. Like we think about after the pandemic, right? The return to globalization. We talk about just-in-time shipping, right? I mentioned all these things before. We talk about shipping first, right? So shipping, the biggest two things is the return to globalization and just-in-time shipping, right? Basically, as companies realize that how much money they can save by using SPIR Global's AI and by using their shipping, like they'll more or less have to use SPIR Global or a competitor's version of like this type of shipping monitoring thing, right? When companies no longer have to worry about this overhead, this buffer, like maintaining a buffer for in case shipping goes wrong, or in case shipping, like something wrong happens with shipping, right? They don't have to hold as much inventory, right? It basically means that they don't have to rent as much warehouse space in order to store stuff, right? Two, they don't have to have as much of a buffer to say like, oh, we need to increase our margins in case there's a lot of returns, right? Or in case there's a lot of people that are canceling their orders, right? When you have this AI, this reliable AI and this reliable data source that tells you, that basically not guarantees, but at least like more or less assures you that, oh, this and this will happen, then you can predict for the future and you can plan accordingly, right? And then you're able to basically lower your margins to be more competitive with other people, or you'll just have higher margins, right? So that's also really important, and companies know this. And the coolest thing is basically when one company does this, right? Like SPIR Global isn't going to be like the data that SPIR Global provides won't be like this or that, right? It won't be like if you have SPIR Global's data, then we'll just use this to counteract it. It'll be one of those things where it's like every company will have to use it in order to stay competitive, in order to stay like along with the rest of the other companies, right? So I think that as more and more companies start using SPIR Global's data and their offerings, right, more and more companies will be enticed and will be kind of forced to use SPIR Global's data as well, right? Or at least something similar to it. Speaking more of demand, right? We talk about global security, right? When one country's leadership is batshit crazy, right? Well, the other companies have this like they have to be worried about, right? That they'll be worried about that, right? The other governments, they'll be worried about that batshit crazy leader, right? So they need global security, and when one person has an edge, right, then everyone needs to maintain the edge. It's basically just an arms race, but instead of with actual nukes, right, you're using data, right? It's a data arms race, right? Trying to get as much intel as you can using SPIR Global, right? And that's really important because you want to stay on the same level field as all the other companies or as all the other governments, right? L is going to be the leadership of the company, right? Basically, I mean, SPIR Global is like the leader in their field, right? Like they are like the head honcho. Think about it, like all the contracts that they've won, right? I'm not saying that they were given it. I'm not saying they shared, right? They won these contracts, right? They just won the contract with the Department of Defense for $14 million, right? That's really important. Next one, I, institutional ownership. This is great. This is perfect, right? SPIR Global, first of all, we got the institutional direct offerings with the $12, I think was it $12? I think it was $12 offering back in February, and then the $14.50 direct offering back in March. I want to say, was it March or May? I think it was March, right? Institutions are piling in, and that was before they were included in the Russell 2000, right? Now that they are included in the Russell 2000, instead of doing the direct offerings, now you have other institutions that are capable of and able to buy it on the public market, right? They're no longer blocked from buying it because they're not in this index. And as SPIR Global gets bigger and bigger, then more and more companies will be more and more willing to buy it because it's no longer as risky of an asset. And last thing, M, right? Basically, this is basically just momentum and like market sentiment, right? I want to say like this chart is beautiful, right? Like you look at the weekly looks beautiful, right? We see there's an obvious uptrend, right? Knock on wood. Also, I'm not like a TA expert, but like it looks really nice, right? And also, SPIR Global today, right? It hit a high of like 1132-ish. Right on the top of that, right on the top of this trend line on the, I think, the 2 hour. I don't wanna jinx it and say that like I'm a master at TA, but like those lines do not lie. Like it hit right at the top and it fell back down. So like it, in my opinion, it's really obeying, or no, I guess it's really following this trend line, and like this trend line is clearly up. And yeah, it'll be volatile, but like the trend is still there, right? So I do think that like market sentiment is shifting. SPIR Global is no longer seen as like this SPAC or like this shady like money draining SPAC, right? SPIR Global is actually seen as a company, right? And they're excelling on all cylinders. So that's CanSlim, right? And I just feel that SPIR Global really fits this screener perfectly, right? Of finding a company that is about to explode, finding a company that's like firing on all cylinders and going to give good returns. So those are my thoughts on SPIR Global. Ticker symbol SPIR. I believe in the company. I believe in the market size. I believe in the management. I think they're firing on cylinders, and they're in the perfect environment to just keep growing and keep winning, right? So those are my thoughts.